Tender engines do not shunt. We shall see about that. That's the one. If I choose you, will you work hard?
Oh, sir. Yes, sir.
That's a good engine. I'll call you Percy.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back for another review. Today's item we will be reviewing will be Percy the Small Engine. Percy was introduced in the book number 5, Troublesome Engines, where in the story, James, Gordon, and Henry didn't want to do their jobs because they said they didn't want to shunt like common tank engines. So the Fat Controller buys a little green tank engine, which ends up being Percy. And Percy, Edward, and Thomas run the line while James, Henry, and Gordon are given a lesson to not be impatient. These stories would obviously be adapted to television, retelling these stories but bringing them out to the small screen. Percy has also become the best friend of Thomas the Tank Engine and would keep these traits, which would pursue on to the CGI series, and he would become such a popular character that he would stay as a main character for the current television series. Percy was released in the year 1992, looking something like this. My most earliest version of Percy is the one from the year 2000. This Percy would sort of look like the original model, except this one would have a few changes on its looks and probably quality. One thing this Percy has is that it has a name under it, just in case if you don't know the character's name. This would also carry on to the more newer versions of this character, making it easier to find out. They had this back ledge, which many 90s items had. They would also have round magnets, round wheels, and they would have the plastic smoke box, which was given to be more realistic than the original wood it had. The face on this Percy is very unique. It's not as remarkable as season 1, but it gives off a nice little version of Percy. The details aren't the best, but they give a nice charming feeling to it. After about a decade of being sold, the model was officially retired and would then be taken out for the new style Percy. This Percy was definitely given a major upgrade. Something like the face was definitely changed. You can see the wheels and the magnets were stuff that didn't really change at all. Anyways, let's see and compare them really quick. As you can see, the detail right here was lacking on this old Percy, only having the basics, but this one had much more newer and necessary details for him. Since we're here, we might as well compare. I've already talked about how the details have been increased a big amount, but we're not going to talk about that. The names were already put down here, which is something I also mentioned. But instead, what we're going to be talking about with these two are the scaling. Well, I'll do the faces last, which is one of the most important parts. But the width is very different. This Percy and this Percy are much more different. This old one is very much skinnier, unlike the other one, which is more, rounder. Another thing is the height. The old Percy is definitely much more taller than the new one. We've already talked about the back, so there's nothing much to talk about there. But as you can see, the details really set it off with the new Percy instead of the old one, making it much more bare. Anyways, let's get on with the faces. These Percys are obviously from two very different eras. The old Percy is more of like the season 5 TATMR era, and the more newer Percy was like a season 8 through 12 kind of era. Let me show an example right here and right here. The proportion on the old Percy face is much more different than the newer one, since that one was more smaller and the new one was much more bigger. They also filled in the white in the eye for the newer ones, unlike the old ones, which never had it. It was just a pupil. But, the eyebrows and the eyes, they did change the shape. Since the old ones, they actually had like a form and stuff. But the new ones just had a little circle and said, "Yup, and that's the eye." The mouth would also change, one being more closed and the other more open. Something I wanted to add is just that I have two of these Percys. I don't know how I ended up with two, but that's all you should obviously know. After being sold for about 7 years, this engine was discontinued and to give room for the new version of Percy, which would be made by Tomy, looking like this. I don't own that version of Percy, but the closest thing I have to it is the 2011 battery operated version. This battery operated Percy wouldn't look too different from the one before it, but there would be one difference. That one is its face. Oh my goodness. As you can see, this Percy was supposed to represent the CGI version of him, which was the current style of the show at the time. But I just gotta say, how poorly made he was. Like, I just don't like this. I don't like seeing it at all. It's very uncomfortable and unpleasant. His face doesn't even remind me of him. I already had the previous version, and that one was far more better than this abomination. Ugh, I'm disgusted. Really, the only positive I got to this is its details. The details are pretty nice and spot on. I like how nicely they're made. They have the dome and the whistle painted, which is something all of these didn't have. And honestly, it didn't look too bad, but the details were already on the previous version, which sort of made this version of my Percy, well, useless, since I really don't have a point for it. But I don't want to talk about it any further. Let's move on. Thankfully, after about 1 year, Tomy dropped the license, and then Fisher-Price picked it up. And so they made a new version of Percy, looking far more better. He would have a gold dome this time, which is something all the models didn't have, and was a first. And would carry on, but that model would then be discontinued for the 2017 version, but wouldn't really change at all, until the Thomas Wood stuff came out. Then they made a pretty big change on their part, which, the Percy looks alright, but I just don't know. I really don't know about it. There's one more Percy I have to show you. I already showed you him, but we might as well talk about him still. This is the battery-operated Percy. This Percy really isn't different from the 2011 version, but the main thing is that its face is much better. Honestly, this actually does look like Percy, like the abomination of the Tomy one. This Percy has a very nice sculpt. I like how it was made, and it makes it much more different from the actual wooden railway ones. The details set it out from any other Percy has ever been. His shape is also very different because, you can see him and Thomas look very different, which is something that wasn't in the original motorized versions of them. I honestly don't have many bad things to talk about this one, unlike the other one. Sadly, it doesn't run, but we can hope one day. I really like Percy. I like his cheerful but cheeky little attitude. And he's one of the main stars of the show. He's also Thomas's best friend, and you're gonna have to get him eventually. Anyways, what do I give the ratings? I gave the old Percy a 8 out of 10. I give the new Percys a 7 out of 10. And the battery operated ones, they're not so different. But the old one, he gets a 7 out of 10. But the new CGI Tommy version of it, yeah, he doesn't get a rating. Get him out of here. If you don't already have Percy in your collection, he's a definite must-have for any collector of Thomas. Any version will do. Well, except that one. But with that, thank you guys so much for watching. Comment, like, share, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. And I'll see you guys next time. Later.